That's a lot. Oh, that's looking cool. Okay. Hey, look at that. I'm so excited. Every winter time, I'm always experimenting with hydroponics because after all, we are indoors, we do get bored, and frankly, I need some plants in my life. So last year, I wound up creating a hydroponic tower using some materials that I got from the Dollar Tree, which was kind of crazy. It actually did work, but it was not aesthetically pleasing. It looked kind of crazy, but it did work. So in this video, and this time around, in this part 2, is that I actually redid that whole entire hydro tower, but it actually looks way better and it actually functions a lot more efficiently than it did in the first video. So let's go check it out. What's going on, my plant peoples? I am the ADHD gardener, where I use gardening, houseplants, and humor as a much needed form of mental health therapy, sobriety, and also learning how to navigate this crazy ass world we live in with tips, tricks, and hacks that we can find and use in our garden. And it comes to plants, because plants can teach us a lot of stuff. So, and behind me, you can see there's probably a bunch of stuff going on. I have all different types of hydroponics going. This one is a semi-hydro. I'm working on that one because I'm having a little bit of issues with the plant itself. This garden tower is what we're going to be talking about today, which is pretty cool. That green tube right up there is an upcoming hydro project, and back behind me is a bunch of hydro projects that I've done in a previous video recently. This top part of the tower is actually bought from Dollar Tree. Each piece of the tower is only $1.25, which is kind of crazy and is totally within my budget. And that is what I've been using. Now, these are whole new pieces because if you've seen my part 1, which is the first attempt at this tower, I wound up using a bunch of different, tower pieces. I just happened to buy a whole bunch of them because they're cheap. So that means I was able to try this all over again. Now, since that first video, I've learned a lot when it comes to that different type of tubing. How in the world am I going to get that water from the base reservoir all the way up and trickle back down? I've made some improvements, so I'm going to show you what I've done to it. And I think this one by far is the most efficient one and works the best, least amount of problems. So I'm going to show you what I've done. So you're going to need a main reservoir. That's where all your water and your nutrients is going to be sitting in. So you got your nutrients and you got your water basin right in here. I wound up drilling a bunch of like 2 little holes just so I can get the tubing down through the reservoir, and that is what I'm holding on. Last video with the hydro tower, all the water was going, trickling down in the tower and then emptying right back into that reservoir. So I happened to keep the whole entire thing. The lid is the same, everything's the same. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to be towering all of these right on top of that, lining up the holes. But the difference is, from the last video to this video, is that I did not want to see a bunch of those tubing looking crazy. First thing you're going to do is drill a bunch of holes into each of these levels of the tower. The one main hole in the center is where the PVC pipe is going to be sitting right in the center of it. But you're also going to need a lot of drainage, and that's where a bunch of mini holes are going to be drilled around in each piece of that tower. On the bottom one is going to be the main hole, and that's where all the water is going to be draining back into the reservoir. So I did all of that, and then I finally managed with the heat gun. Of course, the heat gun was a lot easier to melt the plastic, but you have to be careful because it does melt it too damn much. And then now you have a really big hole, which we'll get to that later because that's exactly what happened to me. The drilling of the hole was not too bad. It was the putting of the PVC through the hole that was the problem. So if you do not have a heat gun, that's not going to work. Luckily, Jose has a heat gun, so I was able to melt the little area of plastic around it. So I was able to push that PVC right through. And that worked out great because that's exactly the only way that I think that I was going to be able to do that. I explained it in the first video in the part 1 as to what type of motor material that you're going to be using, to bring the water from the base of the reservoir all the way up. Find that motor, and then I wound up attaching a big thick main tube, which what I consider an artery. Main pump is like the heart, and that's going to be pumping all the water through all of those tubes. From the motor, which is the heart, then I attach a larger tube, which I consider an artery. From that main artery tube, then I'm going to have a bunch of 1/4-inch tubes, which I consider are like the veins. Those are going to be bringing up further all the water up onto the tower. And then the little capillaries are the little end pieces that you would find toward the end of the tubing. I had a net surrounding the motor because a lot of excess debris that falls into the water, like soil or anything else, that can clog up the motor inside of the hydro, and you don't want that. Okay, now it was time to hide all that crazy looking tubing. In the first video, I had the black tubes all over the place. It looked like a crazy looking octopus, whatever, but not this time. So I was gonna hide all of those black tubes in the PVC pipe during the center. See, I was going to take that PVC, shove it right in the center of the tower, hiding all those tubes. So I just shoved them all inside of that tube. This PVC is a 1-inch, which was kind of like smaller on the inside, but that's okay. I shoved all that tubing all up in there, and it actually worked out because I was able to hide it. Pulling it out was a bit of a difficult, but it's okay though, because it still worked out in the end. Being that I did not add any extra tubing, this tubing was all from the first video. A lot of those 1/4-inch tubes were shorter than I wanted, but again, I'll address it later on. As you can see, the PVC pipe was a little wobbly, but that's all good because I know that with the tower, as I start building it, plus the leca clay balls that I'm going to use to secure the plants, that'll give a little added extra weight so that I know that tower was not going to move. Alright, 3 holes there. Covered up these holes. These match and line up. That's where it's going to be emptying out and dumping out the water. Alright, 1, 2, 3. And now we build. And now we build. The only problem is that now I had a bunch of space in between the PVC pipe and the pieces of the tower. So that's when I got creative and I started thinking foam. I started taking some pool noodle, which is great foam. I'm always using it for hydroponics. And I started cutting pieces of it off and filling the gaps in between the PVC pipe and the tower. Now, I know the water is supposed to be trickling down. However, I did not want it trickling down right in the center. I made holes specifically in parts of the tower, so I knew that that's where the water was supposed to drain. So I filled in the little gaps around the PVC pipe, and then I caulked it all around with waterproof silicone caulking. I am using leca clay balls all over again, and that's going to be the medium that my plants are going to be sitting in. The leca balls are going to be holding this whole entire tower in place with the added weight that it's giving, and that means that I didn't have to add any other rocks just for stability, because the main tower, the PVC pipe that's in there, is going to be giving me a lot more stability. So with the weight of the leca clay balls, with the PVC pipe in the center, that was really it. It did not have much to do with, I didn't have to add anything extra for it to not waver around. It's pretty good. No string, no nothing. The only main problem I did have was the top of where the tubing was starting to pop out. How in the world was I supposed to kind of get it to curve into where I need it, where I need it to rest? That was the main problem, but I also did not want it to look kind of crazy looking with any added extra strings. So what I used was 2 good old things. I used crazy glue, which is good old standard crazy glue, but the real strong stuff. And also just some green fabric floral wire. And it was green, so it can kind of blend in kind of easily. I already had it. I got it from the dollar store. Hey, it's working! Oh, okay. That's a lot more water than I thought. That's a lot. Oh, that's looking cool. Okay. Hey, look at that! I'm so excited. This is kind of fast. But the dripping action really good. Really good. Yo, this actually works on the first try. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Alright, this is not exactly a drip system. Obviously, as you can tell, this is more of a flow system. However, if I was able to find a way to get this to drip, then it would work. Alright, I have the main hole right there. Seems to be going good. Over here too. Oh, damn, this is great. Oh, my God, this works fantastic. Man, this has got to be the best system yet. And it looks way better than the first time. Oh, damn. Now we just got to put in the plants. Now all I only needed was the plants, and the plants unfortunately were inside of my greenhouse. Now why didn't I do this in the early morning when there was actual sunlight and no need to do it in the middle of the darkness? However, it wouldn't be a good old Jackie fashion. So here we are. Luckily I have a little bit of bok choy if I want to. Maybe a little tatsoi. I also have a little bit of lettuce. We can probably go for some lettuces. We're going to be transferring some of the seedlings with some of the soil to here, and then we'll shake it off, you know, all the soil later on. Because when transferring all of these seedlings, you know, from outside to inside, without the soil, those roots will dry up real bad, and, you know, the plants will look really bad. So that means, you know, a little bit of the soil, and then we should be good to go. Look at that. Not much. See? Just enough right there. And we're going to transfer a lot of these. Oh, look how cute! Mira que chiquito! Just rinse off as much as you can of the existing soil in your roots, you know, in your roots of the plants, so you can put them in there. You don't really want a lot of the soil mixing into the water, because that is why, if you noticed in the beginning of the video, I had a net surrounding the motor, because a lot of excess debris that falls into the water, like soil or anything else, that can clog up the motor. Once you've rinsed it all off, all you gotta do is just kind of place your plants in there. Maybe you can try another different type of medium if you want to use pieces of pool noodle and let your seedlings sit right there and then bury it into the leca. That's totally an option too. If you want to use some neck cups, I guess you can, but the leca balls seem to really be, you know, quite effective in holding that plant in place. I've noticed from the last video is that if you have your whatever you're growing, your greens inside of this tower, and the water is constantly hitting the leaves, then it can develop some kind of rot, and the leaves will kind of like die. So I had to kind of move all the leaves over so it wasn't really touching too much of the water. The root system we want touching, that's exactly what we want, but the leaves itself, we kind of really don't want a bunch of constant water. And speaking of that, how long do I set this motor for? This pump. The pump. Water pump. That's what I should have called it. How long am I going to set this water pump for? This is an active flow. This is an active flow of hydroponics, which means that the water is constantly flowing all the time. There is no reservoir where those roots are sitting in at all times. So that means that the water constantly has to flow in order for the roots to be, you know, absorb all the nutrients. So that means I'm going to be running this a good majority of the time of the day. I will probably give it maybe about an hour or two, maybe a few little breaks, if I remember actually to do that. Maybe to, you know, to give the plant a little break, a little breathing space, maybe to dry off some of the leaves. Reservoir, depending on how big of a reservoir you're going to be using, this is probably like a 20 gallon container. You don't need to have a container that large of a size. As long as your garden tower can fit on, actually it could probably fit on a 5-gallon bucket, if we're honest. That may need a little bit more stability to hold on to the 5-gallon bucket, but if that's what you got, then I'm sure you'll get a little creative and try to figure out if it'll work or not. Why not? You won't know until you try it. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you tried this before? Have you tried any type of, you know, creating your own hydroponic systems at home? I would love to know. I mean, because I am curious and I'm always trying out new different systems because why not? I like to stretch my little creative brain every now and again. I hope you enjoyed this video and you really got some good information out of it. Let me know down in the comments below. You know, have you tried this before? Have you tried your own different system? I'm a very curious person because maybe if you got a good idea, I would love to test it out myself. Until the next episode, you guys, where you and me both are going to be growing our happiness one plant at a time, one day at a time. God bless you all. Until the next episode, peace and love.